Hi guys, welcome back to videos. Real quickly, we're going to do 3-1 video, identifying pairs of lines and angles. And I'm going to try to do this, put anything on the video that is in the textbook so that you don't have to take your textbook home. So first of all, we're going to start out just doing some vocabulary. So please define parallel lines. Two lines that do not intersect and are in the same plane. So two lines that do not intersect and are in the same plane. So what you want to envision there is that they have to both be drawn on an index card. An index card models what a plane looks like. So if two lines do not intersect and are on the same piece of paper, we call those parallel. And to make an illustration of that, introducing parallel lines, when we want to mark two lines are parallel, we do a solid triangle going in the same direction on both lines. Okay, skew lines are two lines that intersect, two lines that do not intersect. And are not on the same plane. So when they're not on the same plane, you want to think three-dimensional. And I know this is difficult to imagine because we're using a piece of paper, which is 2 dimensions, to represent a 3-dimensional picture. So if you can, in the margins here, let's just draw a cube so that you can illustrate that this is 3 dimensions. And there's all kinds of line segments here, all kinds of vertices. So two lines that do not intersect ever but are not on the same plane would be these two that I highlighted. They're not running parallel to each other as if they were both on this top shelf of the cube. They're running in opposite directions, but they're never going to intersect because they are on opposite planes. Two other examples of skew lines here. You could easily say this one and this one are skewed to each other. Okay. The concept of parallel planes are just two planes that do not intersect. And a picture of that to visualize in your head is if we stack up 2 index cards on top of each other. To do that drawing, you guys can pause this for a second and make a sketch like this. Notice to show that this green plane is underneath the blue plane, they make that part in dashes. Okay, so pause that and then go ahead and fill that in. Okay, then we get to definition called a transversal. And a transversal is just a line that intersects 2 or more other lines. A line that intersects 2 or more other lines. And for our illustration purposes, we're almost always going to label the transversal with a T. So if you've got 2 lines, and let's call those M and N. Remember, when you label lines, you use a lowercase kind of script or cursive letter. So a transversal is just going to come down here. We use a cursive T to represent the transversal. It does that. Okay. Now we're going to jump ahead. If you can go to example 1 in your worksheet. I'm going to give you just a minute. Pause the video and work through all of these. Okay. When you've got those finished, then unpause it and you can see the solutions. Okay. Then go down to this checkpoint. Think of each segment in the figure as part of a line. Which lines or planes in the figure appear to fit the description? So something parallel to MN and contains point J, that would be line JL. Those are parallel. So you could mark those. If it's skew to MN and contains point J. Okay, so we need something in a different plane than MN but contains this point. That would be line JK. So I'm going to highlight here. These two are skew because they're in opposite planes, never going to intersect. Perpendicular to MN and contains point J. Okay, so perpendicular, and of course this is kind of weak because we technically do not know that it's perpendicular. It should have a right angle there, but if you draw that in, we'll just pretend that that was marked because we don't assume. That would be line JN. And name the plane that contains J and appears to be parallel to plane MNO. So here's plane MNO. So what other side is parallel to that? It would be this plane, and we would call that plane LJK. I don't think it matters much, but notice that I did them in the same order. So M to N to O is this triangle. So I did L to J to K. All right, then we come to the two important postulates, parallel postulate and perpendicular postulate. So please pause the video, take a minute to fill in this. I want you to read through these two concepts and make sure that you understand it before you go on. And then jump down to example 2. Use the diagram at the right to answer each question. Name a pair of parallel lines. Again, you can only name those if they are marked, so notice that they have the little triangles. So the parallel lines would be line AB and line CD are parallel. Name a pair of perpendicular lines. Okay, so because this is marked right here, we would say line AB is perpendicular to line AC, and this might be a new notation for you. So highlight that. That upside down capital T means perpendicular to. And I'm going to jump back up here to make sure that you know that this is the notation for parallel. So line AB is parallel to CD would look like this. And line AB is AB perpendicular to BC? AB is not perpendicular to BC because AB is perpendicular to AC, and by the perpendicular postulate there is exactly one line perpendicular to another line through a given point. So AB and BC, they cannot be perpendicular because AB and AC are already perpendicular through this point. Okay? Go down to this checkpoint. I want you to think about this, pause it, and write an answer. We'll get to that tomorrow. We'll talk about that. Alright, and then turning the page. If you are using your textbook, all of this section is found on page 149. If not, I'd like you to take a minute to read and look at these illustrations. These notations for angles all need to be memorized. So, angles formed by a transversal. And to be reminded of a transversal, it's when a line comes in and intersects two other lines. So this highlighted line right here with the lowercase t, that's considered your transversal. So if two angles are called corresponding angles if they have corresponding positions. So the way I like to talk about that is if you focus in right here on this intersection, as if this were streets, do you see that angle 2 is kind of in the upper right-hand corner of that intersection? So then looking at this intersection, which intersection angle is in the same upper right position? So 2 and 6 are corresponding because they're in the same relative position of the intersection. Corresponding. Those could be, if this was 1 and 5, those would be corresponding because they're both in the upper left-hand positions of the intersection. The next one, 2 angles are considered alternate interior angles if they lie between the 2 lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So you've always got to locate your transversal. And notice the word alternate is because they're on opposite sides of the transversal. And interior because they're on the inside of the other 2 lines that the transversal's cutting. So if we were to label this 2 and 6, 2 and 6 would also be alternate interior angles. Alternate exterior angles are the same thing. Alternate means opposite sides of the transversal. So notice that 1 is on the left, angle 8 is on the right. So they're alternate sides of the transversal, and they're on the outside of those 2 intersecting lines. Alternate exterior. We would also say that 2 and 7 are alternate exterior. The next one, consecutive interior. 2 angles are called consecutive interior if they're on the same side of the transversal and they're on the interior. Now there's another very common name for this, and over here we sometimes call consecutive interior as same side interior. And I like that. A lot of kids will abbreviate that SSI, same side interior. I like that definition or that shortcut because same side helps us remember that they're both on the same side of the transversal versus consecutive. Okay, these 4 phrases, terms, you have got to be very, very good at. We're going to learn properties about them, but you have to be able to know how to find corresponding angles and so forth. Okay, so take a minute now, and can you please complete example 3 and the checkpoint? We will start class by showing those. Okay, when you're finished, please go back to the very first page, and as a quiz, without flipping back, can you please do a drawing and label 2 corresponding angles? So your drawing's going to have to look something like this. You have to have 2 lines and then a transversal that intersects the other 2. But can you please label, either if you want to label angles with numbers or with letters, but I want a picture of what corresponding angles would be. Then the same thing, a picture of what alternate interior, alternate exterior, and consecutive. And I want you to do this without flipping back. See if you can kind of test your knowledge on that. All right, you guys are done for the night. Hope you have a great evening.